With the recent fallout with the United Kingdom and Russia over the poisoning of a former Russian spy on British soil, we have witnessed the speedy fallout on the world's media between Russia and the United Kingdom, and now the West is uniting quickly against Russia. Media reports speak of Russia's military might. In fact, the unveiling of their new upgraded nuclear arsenal 2 weeks ago coincidentally ties in with all that is currently happening between the nations. Is it orchestrated? An excuse to have Western countries united against the power of Russia? More on this in the next video. However, on this video, the rapid pace of this fallout, which is developing further every day, is alerting the Christian world and many others around the planet that the time we are living in is perilous. Such signs of our time is only making the prophecies foretold at Fatima and Garabandal come to light. The world stage and the events between these key nations is paramount to the prophecies, and they are coming right on time. I would advise the viewer to have knowledge of the prophecies of Fatima, Garabandal and Medjugorje in order to best understand this timeline presentation. However, it should be easy to understand the context stage by stage. Let us begin. We have our time slot. We have our markers, signs and precise information that make these times very obvious. The 20th century is the century. This begins with Pope Leo XIII, who had a vision in 1884 where he witnessed God grant Satan the 20th century to test the church. As a result of this test, it would affect the world. It was stated shortly into the 20th century, Satan's time would begin. This is clearly marked with the First World War. However, Our Lady appeared in Fatima in 1917, where she asked for prayers and penance to combat the fall of mankind. The world was about to begin a dark era, and she stated that the rise of communism would stem from Russia, and that Russia would spread her errors throughout the world. She foretold a worse war would come in the reign of Pope Pius XI. This prophecy was later fulfilled during World War II, almost 20 years after she told the children this in Fatima. And indeed, the Pope at the time of World War II was Pope Pius XI. So it is more logical to show 1917 as the beginning of the battle of the century between Satan and the woman clothed in the sun, as she is described in the book of Revelation. The great sign at Fatima, witnessed by an estimated 70,000 people, was the spinning of the sun, and during this time many were healed of illnesses and many converted. It was a dramatic moment in the history of mankind and a clear marker of the beginning of the apocalyptic war. Since Fatima, Russia is the central theme. Russia would begin the errors and attack on the church through the rise and spread of communism, but her Blessed Mother said that in the end Russia would convert and there would be peace. With all that was foretold in 1917 that did come to pass, and after the aftermath of World War II, the world was recovering. It was then in the 1960s that a new era began. The swinging 60s saw mankind go for freedom and love in his own way, in his own image, sex, drugs and rock and roll. But during the 60s, some major events were also underway. Firstly, Pope John XXIII held the Second Vatican Council, which was to identify the Church in the modern day world. At the same time period, the Fatima visionary Lucia, who at this point was a Carmelite nun, stated that Our Lady wanted the third secret of Fatima read to the world in 1960. But John XXIII failed to do this. It is reported that when he read the secret, he fainted, and upon composing himself, he said it was not for our time. The secret, therefore, was never made public. During the early 1960s, Our Lady appeared over the few years in a small village in northern Spain, Garabandal, with many people witnessing supernatural signs and wonders. There are main prophetic messages. These today are becoming more evident, and this should draw us on a more clear focus. There would only be 4 more popes after the death of John XXIII. Then it will be the end of these times. Not the end of the world, but the end of these times. Once the 4 popes have come, then it will be the beginning of the tribulation. A tribulation which will spark the return of communism and persecution of the church. But also the world will be falling quickly into an irreversible abyss, with global warfare and calamities. The visionary stated everything will be at its worst. To me, it is Satan's century coming to a conclusion. Everything he has worked on to destroy the world and souls, and this is him firing all weapons at once. But when this madness begins, it will spark the worldwide warning. This warning is another marker. As the visionary stated at Garabandal, when the warning occurs, the great miracle will occur within 12 months. So when will this possibly be? No one knows the exact date, but events on earth will be a clear sign that it will be soon, and this week alone is a standout sign in my opinion. When the warning occurs, we have a maximum period of 12 months when the great miracle will occur. The great miracle will be announced 8 days in advance by Conchita, the Garabandal visionary. This announcement will no doubt be broadcasted and certainly shared throughout the world and social media. Well, we don't know the date of the miracle, so perhaps it's years away? No, actually it's not. If this is to be true, then we have to remember the prophecy of the 4 popes. Conchita said there will be 4 popes after the death of John XXIII, but one of these 4 popes will have a very short time as pope. The first pope after John XXIII was Pope Paul VI, who famously stated during his pontificate that the smoke of Satan had entered the church. Then we had Pope John Paul, who was only pope for 33 days, the short reign. Then the third pope was the first non-Italian pope in over 400 years, John Paul II, the pope that went out to the world, the pope who was shot on May 13th, 1981, fulfilling the prophetic vision of Fatima. May 13th, 1917 was the first apparition of Fatima. The 4th and final pope, Pope Benedict XVI, who on the exact day of his resignation announcement, lightning struck the dome of St. Peter at the Vatican. Surely a clear sign, or just perfect coincidence? Pope Francis. Pope Francis is therefore the Pope that will witness the prophesied events of Garabandal. The Garabandal visionaries claim that it's shortly after the Pope's return from Moscow that everything starts to develop, fallout between nations, war, rise of persecution, everything all at once. But let us not forget Medjugorje. June 24th, 1981 was the beginning of the apparitions of Our Lady, the Queen of Peace. It is reported that during his recovery after being shot, John Paul II began praying a novena for Our Blessed Mother to help him in his pontificate, and when the new commission began the revision and investigation of the Fatima Prophecies, it was clear the date he was shot was the fulfillment of the Fatima prophecy. And upon the completion of his novena, he received the first report of the apparitions in Medjugorje, less than 1 month since he was shot. Medjugorje apparitions continue to this day. Our Lady gives a monthly message to the world, but she has revealed 10 secrets which will unravel in time. These contain events on earth. Some are good, some are bad. The Medjugorje presentation on this playlist details these further. But what stands out in Medjugorje? Our Blessed Mother said that what she began in Fatima, she will fulfill in Medjugorje. The fulfillment is world peace. That's why she appears as the Queen of Peace. The fulfillment is the triumph of the Immaculate Heart. She said in Fatima that after all the badness comes to pass, Russia will convert and there will be peace. Her Immaculate Heart will triumph. Just look at where Russia is as a superpower over the past decade. Look especially at this month with the upgraded nuclear arsenal and military might. But while the news of the West focuses on this, don't forget that Russia is having a renewal of Christianity. It is not the dark communist state it once was in the mid-20th century. There is a fresh spring of faith in Russia, with President Putin himself showing great relations with the Russian Orthodox Church, but also the Vatican and Russia are showing better diplomatic relations than ever before. This makes it all the more believable that Francis will be the Pope to go to Moscow. When would there ever be a good time to go to Moscow? This week the UK expelled all Russian diplomats, and in return Russia returned the same treatment by expelling the UK diplomats. The West is now uniting with the UK, France, Germany, America, so far. All this happening rapidly within the first week. Who is going to be the peacekeeper? The Pope would certainly be a good fit. The fact that President Putin has been to the Vatican several times can only suggest also that the invitation to the Pope has already been given. But all the more reason for the Pope to play the peacekeeper between Russia and the West. Finally, March 18th. There is not a great deal of emphasis on this date other than our Blessed Mother stated in Medjugorje that this is a deliberate date. Not only is it the date when she appears to Marian, the visionary who is to reveal the secrets, but in time, March 18th will become obvious as to why it is important. We do not know which year March 18th will play the vital importance. All that has been discussed from the prophecies concerning Russia and the West, Russia and the Pope, this March 18th is the Russian election. It is going to be interesting as to what comes from that day onwards. As the signs unravel, so will the videos, so please subscribe, like and share, and spread the message.